Ricky, you famously said, if you don't love it, leave it after beating Georgia Tech in the 2010 Orange Bowl. How has that quote applied in other areas of your life?
The high level overview of how you could use that for a regular, day-to-day interaction or that competitive arena is that, like, be there, be present, let it rip, play fast, play free, play together. Don't hold anything back, love this opportunity right in front of you, or just turn around and walk away. You can go sit in the stands if you want. If you cross these white lines, you have to be in love with everything that can happen on that field. You have to love the adversity. You have to love the good stuff. You have to love the bad stuff. You have to be okay with the fact that, like Jim Zorn said, you're putting yourself in the arena to critique, and you got to be okay with that. If not, you got to get out of there. And that only becomes more real as you go up in the ranks. Like, you get closer to playoff high school football, it's intense. You get to college football, it's more intense than that. Then you get to the pros, and it's like, dude, if you don't really love this, you got to get out of here, because you'll be exposed. And you could take that into many different arenas, whether it's being a father or running a podcast. If you're not all in on the small details, then you're eventually going to fall away from it, and it's not going to be something that's important to you.
And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about that quote with you, not necessarily in the context of football, but just in life, because it, like you just said, it does apply in other areas. And that's kind of what clicked in my mind when I went back and replayed that on YouTube. I'm like, wait a second, like, here, this is kind of a life lesson, but right now it's in the context of football. You're all fired up after, winning the Orange Bowl. And so I think it was really cool, though, like how you kind of describe that and how it can apply to your life. Because it's true, if you're not working on those small details and you don't fully love it, then what the heck are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that can at least give you perspective. And look, if you're in something that you don't love, that's okay, but at least be aware of it. And you won't be aware of it if you don't kind of put it in that context. Like, am I here? Am I present? Do I love what I'm doing? Am I all in with this? Or is this something where it's like, dude, if it was gone tomorrow, you'd be like, that's okay, I'm not too worried about it, and it's like, that's kind of that relationship or that perspective that you'd like to have for something, especially as you get older. You start to make more concentrated decisions the older you get. I know, as just starting a family and all those things, like, all the noise and the nonsense just goes away. You're not worried about anything that's not important anymore, and you're really focused on the things that you love and that you have a passion for. And if you can do that at a younger age, the more power to you. And it probably can, help you find your passion earlier, and really find that joy of really waking up every day and attacking something that you love.
It's so interesting because now I'm 32. And so I think for a lot of years of my life, it was just doing things, kind of just saying yes, just yes to everything. Like, yeah, I'll do that without really any like conscious thinking. Like, where do you want to go to dinner here? Sure. And then now I think I've done a lot of work on, like, wait a second, take a quick second, like, pause, take a little time out. Like, is this something like you really want to do? Does hanging out with this person, does it really serve you? Like, or are you just trying to get away from your own thoughts? And so it's been like probably like one of the most beautiful journeys ever, because it's changed my life. Like, there's more energy to kind of put back into Collin's basket on how I can show up for the things that matter, my brother, my girlfriend, family, and all that good stuff. So it's fascinating. Like, if you can get that awareness, like, what can happen to your life.
Yeah, I mean, you compartmentalize and you get rid of distractions. I think young kids right now are so distracted. We all were. I think that young kids today have more to deal with because of social media. Thankfully, it wasn't a thing, or at least big enough thing at the time when I was young, to distract you. We had our PlayStations and our Game Boys and stuff like that, but nowhere near the degree of distraction that the young kids are dealing with today. And so I think that if you can kind of find what you love, and I had a strength coach at the Chiefs that talked about this steel trap, mind. And it's almost like Magneto with the X-Men, where he would put that helmet on so, Professor X couldn't read his thoughts. And that's sort of an imagery for this idea of like, as you go on and you find what you love, you got to kind of put that Magneto helmet on a little bit, and you got to block out something, because there's going to be distractions. I don't care what you're doing or where you are, and they'll come in various forms. But the more that you can focus during the day on what you're trying to get done and not waste time, that'd be the ideal scenario. And you have to have that like sort of internal dialogue on, well, what do I love? What do I want to do? And then, like you said, take note on, is this serving me? Is this something I love doing? If not, maybe you have to make a tough decision about it and move on from it. And those things all start with awareness. And it really kind of starts with awareness on what I do and what I do not want to become. And that's a tough decision or discussion at times. But the other side of that is growth. And that's what we're all trying to do and what we're all striving for at the end of the day.
I don't know if this is like kind of similar for you, but like I feel like if you don't take the time to become aware, the noise just gets louder and louder and louder and louder to a point where like you don't even like, you think you're going crazy to some degree. Like I think everyone has a choice to dive into it. I think it can get a little like challenging and scary sometimes when you like think about like, well, is this kind of diving into like the ins and outs and the roots of your life. I know from my perspective, for a long time, I was like, screw this. Let's just run 100 miles an hour. Let's run through walls. Let's see what happens. Then you just get tired. Like you're just tired. And I think, at least from my perspective, I just didn't want to be tired anymore. And I started like having a better understanding of all these little decisions and not stopping, or just sapping the gas tank, man.
Yeah, it's like burning the candle at both ends. I know I did that for years on end. It feels like when you're in your youth, you don't have that cornerstone quite yet. And I think for me, a huge part of that has been, raising a family. I think that's given me so much perspective, kind of getting renewed in my faith and those types of things, being around family, being around my church more, kind of getting my feet underneath me a little bit and seeing what's important, seeing what's not important, hitting the refresh button on perspective. I think every 5 years is maybe a good idea for everyone. And I think we all sort of naturally do that. Maybe some don't, I don't know. I just feel like every 5 years I look back and I go, man, I had no clue, I was way off. You think, and then, 5 years from now, I'll look back today and be like, there's a lot you were missing. So I think that's the idea. I think the white belt mentality has served me well. It's served others well. It's something that it's hard to do because you got to quiet down your ego. You got to calm your ego down, and its natural sort of knee-jerk reaction to push away anything that's about to expose it. And like I said, I've had the opportunity to be around a lot of really good coaches that had a lot of really good insight. There's really two types of people. There's people that look out the window, and there's people that look in the mirror. He's like, the people that look out the window are looking for people to blame. They're looking for someone else to point the finger at. The people that look in the mirror, the finger points right back at them. And they're always starting with the person in the mirror when it comes to corrections. And that is something that I have like wholeheartedly tried to bring in, use, and then tell other people about, because it's just such an impactful. And I feel like if you're using that lens, that filter to interact on the day to day, there's of course going to be situations where you're like, man, that's out of my control. But if you take that irrational sort of look at it, like, how can I fix myself? How can I fix? You keep the focus there. But I think that's the idea, is that you have some sort of like, okay, where are we going with this? Blame. Like, am I going to deflect this and put this somewhere else, or am I going to take it? Because that's where I can get the growth. Like, if I'm the issue, then I have to fix myself. If someone else is the issue, it's easy, dude. I get to sit back in the lawn chair. They got to fix that. No, find out what you did wrong and then go ahead and fix that and just keep chopping wood that way.
Do the lines ever feel blurred to you though? Like, have there ever been moments in your life where you're like, I don't know if this is, you're starting to gain that awareness, but then you second guess. You're like, well, I don't know if this is actually me or if this is the other person. Have you ever run into that obstacle before?
I mean, there's times, I guess, yes. I mean, when I was in the NFL, it was a real, like it was both extremely rewarding and gratifying to be there, but also extremely frustrating to not grow as a player and not improve when I was putting so much effort into improving. And that was a wrestle for me. Like I was being, fired, essentially cut, multiple times throughout my career. And those are really tough days to go through. But as I went on in my life and kind of look back at those moments, like I realized I deserved to be cut because of a skill set that was lacking. And I think you wrestle with that at the moment where you're like, you want to blame a GM or you want to blame a head coach. And I was always one who was like, it's nobody else's fault but my fault. It's nobody else's fault but my fault. But you're wrestling with those situations because, of course, your parents, your friends, your family, oh, this coach is dumb. He should do this. He should do that. So you're hearing that on one side, but I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, dude, you're not playing that well. You're not playing good enough to be a starting quarterback in this league. And I'd argue you're not playing good enough to be a reliable backup. So you need to find something that you can improve and get better at. So I had a sense of urgency of like, dude, you're doing it wrong. Find a way to do it right. So, kind of going back to what my father would teach me when I was young is like, don't blame anybody. He was big on that. Stop blaming people. Don't point your finger at anybody but yourself. So that was etched in early, confirmed in the middle at Iowa. And then I needed to kind of pull it out of my backpack on my own as I got older. As the stakes get higher, there's more noise in the room. And it's tough. Like it was a very challenging time for me to go through that and be like, dude, you're going back home. You just got done with a season and it didn't go well. And you got to, you're going to meet family and friends again. And they're going to ask you about how your career is going. You're like, I was just fired for the third time. What do you mean how my career is going? It's like, and so that was tough, but it was great learning. And I learned so much about my own character and kind of, where to go with your emotions during those times. So I think for me, it's been something that was early on in my life that was instilled. And like I said, just confirmed and then able to kind of shine through on my own. And probably the most adverse times I'd been through, which was, in the NFL.